Welcome to the Fresh Vending podcast, where we discuss how smart vending machines are revolutionizing fresh food accessibility for both creators and consumers.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Fresh Vending podcast. I'm Isaac and my co-host Nathan here.
Hello.
Today we want to talk about adoption of food tech amongst institutions like universities and hospitals, city councils, restaurants. We have a few technologies we want to get through, and we feel like these are really exciting times in food tech. And why don't we start with one that's close to home for me, at least. I'm on a university almost every day, and it is a Grubhub campus. And for those who don't know what a Grubhub campus is, it's when Grubhub integrates with the college campus and the students can sign in on Grubhub app and use their meal plan.
Let me interject here real quick, Isaac. So, in previous episodes, you were, living in San Francisco. At one point, you were in Hawaii surfing every day. Talk a little bit about what are you doing on a college or university campus every day?
Yeah, I should give some background on that, Nathan. Thank you. So I'm getting my master's right now in agricultural and applied economics at Virginia Tech. So I was in Hawaii maybe 3 months ago, and I just traversed the entire latitude of the U.S. To come all the way here to Virginia.
Okay, very good. Just setting a little context, but please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, and so anyway, so I get here and I hear these students talk about Grubhub as a way of ordering. And I remember my first day, I walk into the West End Market here on campus, which is a food court, and I see these big screens by all of the different food stands, and on the screens it's a grid of boxes with numbers on them, and some of the numbers are highlighted red, some are gray, and some are orange. And I guess gray meant that the Grubhub order was not being made yet. Orange was in progress, and then red was it was ready. And I later learned that's what it was. And so it's a very interesting technology, because I did my undergrad a few years ago, and I didn't have this on my campus. So I will say though, I talk to students all the time, and they say it's fairly annoying because it takes a long time once they put in their order on Grubhub. And
you could put it in, it's mobile first, right? So you could put it in anywhere on campus and kind of try to lead yourself a little bit.
Right, but students usually don't have the foresight to, an hour and a half before they start hearing their stomach grumble to put it in.
We hope as a graduate student that you have that figured out.
Yeah, I know everything there is to know about my circadian timing of my hunger. But yeah, I find it's easier for me to just walk up to the actual food stand and order. But I think it's a great idea just because it integrates with the meal plan, right? And some universities allow ordering from off-campus sites, so off-campus restaurants can capture the meal plan money. That's kind of cool.
Nice. That's very cool.
Yeah. So. That's something that's growing. I think Grubhub's very, very smart in integrating with these college campuses, because students are a huge market. So
yeah, I know I've heard that has pretty mass adoption, definitely across the universities that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. You talked to a lot of universities, Nathan. So have they kind of shared why they integrated with Grubhub, or any success stories here?
I think that it's just, looking at something that's seamless, right? It's something that you have this integration with the meal plan, all these different dining services. And then on top of that, it's technology. So you have the data, you can understand the trends, and it just bringing it all into one place, because so many of these, especially the delivery technologies, are like fractionalized. It's like, how many apps do you need for every different food concept? Some campuses will have 30 or 40 different retail outlets that are not under the same brand. It's complex. So this is being able to aggregate all that for simplicity for the user, and then also simplicity for the institution. It's a big win.
Yeah. And you speak of delivery now, that kind of segues into Grubhub's recent partnership with Starship. I don't know if people know this, but Grubhub has partnered with this robotics company where they now can deliver food to students on campus via these delivery robots, and they travel 4 miles an hour. They can carry 3 bags of groceries. and apparently they can be in they can operate in snow and rain and all that. And I can show people a picture actually. So here's a for
Yeah,
those.
while you're pulling that up, I actually had some firsthand interactions. So I think it was 4 years ago. I was at a technology symposium when the first campuses were launching with Starship.
Uh-huh.
I think it was George Mason University, and they had 40 of these, and they're going all over campus. And at first, it seemed like, is this a novelty or kind of, you want to understand the practicality of it, but it's something that's scaled really well. And I think last I knew, they had something like 50 campuses that were
Uh-huh.
using this technology. But it's really cool. Like they gave a demo, and this little robot just rolls up and it understands where you are based on your, cell phone and proximity, and the whole campus is mapped out. And you just hit a button on your cell phone, and the top pops open, and your food's there, and it's hot, and these containers are insulated. And it was really a cool experience. And I think they charged like $1.99 for delivery, which I think for most people is kind of not that big of a deal. So a lot nicer than spending $5 for delivery for with somebody in a Honda Civic, and you kind of feel obligated to tip them on top of that. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and the Honda Civic, last time I checked, doesn't come with temperature controlled food compartments. So
Yes, yes, and also the kind of the impact on the environment. These fleets are electrical, and they usually have some sort of building on campus that is their like charging port where they all kind of live. So pretty cool to see that scale and be successful on many fronts.
yeah, so yeah, this is the picture. They look pretty sleek, and I think there are cameras on there to make sure people don't pick them up and vandalize them and everything. So yeah, pretty thoughtful product here. I heard they are also doing it in cities, not just on campuses, which I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think the
Um,
thought process was on campus, you're going to get that early adoption of students are kind of more forward thinking, therefore universities are. And then also, the university has a very specific footprint, and it's not as chaotic inside of a university. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of students, but it's a little bit more of a controlled environment with, oftentimes you'll have some wider sidewalks that are maybe hopefully better maintained than some of our city streets. But yeah, they kind of proved the model out there, and I don't know if it was Austin or I feel like somewhere major metropolitan in Texas, they had started rolling it out into the streets. And it's not just Starship. There's also competitors. I know KiwiBot is kind of a similar concept. I think there's a couple more.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. I mean, the way these robots are trained and then the way they're going to perform in the wild on a city street with taxis and bikes and things like that,
Right. And there's definitely
yeah,
going to be those people that kind of kick them. But I will say this, though, it is cool. Like they're all trained so that if they need to, we went through like where there was they recognize that, oh, there's some, a large obstacle here. It's kind of like a big Roomba vacuum, right? Like it
yeah,
recognizes a turn.
yeah.
Um, but then also like, it knows just to kind of come to a nice slow stop when somebody walks in front of it. Cause you see videos of like students or people test it, right? They're like, how good is this technology? And it's pretty solid. It's something that I've talked to people in universities that have said, yeah, it's been a great addition for us.
That's awesome. So that's one kind of robot, which is a delivery robot. Nathan, you've had a lot of experience working with other types of food robots, Chowbotics and others. You want to talk a little bit about your experience there? I can pull up a picture of some things as you talk about them.
Yeah, sure. So Chowbotics is a company that I actually worked for. They were ultimately acquired by DoorDash about a year and a half ago, and you could make a custom salad. So you'd say, I want romaine with chicken and tomatoes and Caesar dressing, whatever it may be, and it makes it for you right in front of your face. And it has this carousel that spins around with 24 different ingredients, and it drops it into your bowl. And not only was it, you'd get a really high quality salad that was customized to you, but it was also kind of an amazing sense of theater. So really enjoyed working with that company, the product. After they were acquired by DoorDash, It did not work out well. I'm not sure that, DoorDash fully kind of understood where to take the product. But ultimately that company shuttered recently, just in September of this year in 2022. So kind of not the greatest ending, but it's something that type of technology will absolutely be back. It's just a matter of time. And it can not only be used on kind of like the smart vending side, but they were also, in discussions with many companies like Panera of saying, is this something that we could use to, replace the person that's making salads in the restaurant? So the order goes directly from, I pick up my cell phone and I order a salad from Panera, and it bypasses the entire staff and goes right to the robot is making it inside the restaurant. So I think there's definitely going to be applications back of the house very soon, and we're kind of seeing that with other technologies like Flippy, the robotic arm that can flip burgers. Companies like White Castle, for example, have started to roll that out in a number of locations. So cool stuff when you think about robotics on that side. And then there's also companies. It's interesting to see brands that are starting to make that kind of transition. So, for example, Pete's Coffee. It's a large chain that started local to us here in Berkeley, California. They acquired a company called Brigo, and Brigo is a robotic smart vending coffee unit. It's about the size of a Volkswagen Bug, and up and it'll make custom coffee for you, and there's no people are involved in the process at all. So that was kind of interesting to see that. Another good example is out here in the Bay Area, there's a company called Blended, and they have a robotic arm that makes smoothies. And there's a few companies that have similar concepts. But I know that Jamba Juice just started rolling them out, where it's a fully branded Jamba Juice experience. And that's probably more like the size of maybe like a smart car. And again, just embracing it and saying, how far can we go with fully eliminating the human element for purposes of efficiency and 24-hour accessibility, but still figure out how do we have a great brand experience and kind of, so they're pushing the envelope, but I'm guessing typical to technology, there's probably going to be where they step a bit too far in eliminating the human element, and then maybe need to figure out, how do we, further kind of polish the experience and tailor it so that we don't lose the essence of our brand too much.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a pretty cool overview of robotics and specific brands. I have a question, Nathan. So when you were at Chowbotics
Sure.
and you talked to these potential clients, how much pushback was there? Were you guys, truly spearheading this? Do you feel like people were open to this kind of new technology?
Yeah, so I think it was really interesting because Chowbotics was many steps ahead of kind of what was happening, not only in the American market, but on the global market. Again, it was the first fresh food vending robot in the world. So there was a sense of novelty for sure. Like I showed Sally the fresh food robot to at least 1,000 people. It was their first time seeing it, where I was standing in front of them. And there was always a wow factor. There was always this kind of spark and curiosity, which is great and very cool. But when you get past the cool factor of the technology, it's like, okay, that's awesome. But, you get into the practicality of how much does this cost? How hard is it to operate? How intuitive is it for users? Because the bottom line is that you also need to sell salads. So there was definitely some, when you're the first and you're pioneering, it's a heavy weight on your shoulders. So with Sally, I mean, the robot was $40K. So right there off the bat, you eliminated quite a few, the vast majority of companies that weren't willing to take a risk of that size. But when it was put into the right environment, 24-hour environments with, people that were willing to adopt the technology and really embrace it, it was a really awesome amenity.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Um, I think it's probably a good time to talk about another fresh food concept, unattended retail concept, Farmer's Fridge. This is a Chicago-based company, for those who haven't heard of it, about $42 million in funding. And their website says over 400 fridges in hospitals and universities and airports. You and I have both tried Farmer's Fridge in separate airports. I was in Philly and you were in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I've Farmer's Fridge. They've had theirs in the Chicago airport maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. It's been quite a while because I've used it several times. I think 3 or 4 times, and we had the pandemic in the middle, so they've had it there for quite a while. And it was interesting for them because they're soup to nuts. They're completely vertically integrated. So they have proprietary hardware, software. They make the food. They do the logistics. And there's a blessing and a curse in that, right? Because it's it's a very complex business model. But when you nail it, it can be really special. And I think the last couple times that I've tried it at, I think it was O'Hare when I was flying through, I
Yeah.
had a great experience. For me, what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I was in Philly and I was looking for something to eat and I found a Farmer's Fridge. The first thing is I was really happy with the price. I mean, I was expecting to pay whatever, 12, 13 bucks for this salad and this fancy vending machine, but I think it was around like $8 or $9, at least when I was there. And I really liked the huge touch screen. I could go and see the ingredients that were in each salad. It looked very, very nice. Let's see, I can scroll through. So this kind of pseudo mason jar design that's recyclable apparently looks so nice. And so I liked it. I mean, and there's a pilot right behind me, and it seemed like he was just kind of a regular there at the Philly airport. Yeah, these guys, like you said, vertically integrated. They're in retail stores as well, and I think they do delivery now. So yeah, I'm excited to see where they go.
Yeah, it's been great to watch them. I mean, they started the challenge also with being vertically integrated is not only that you need to wear so many hats and be great at so many things, but it just takes a ton of money. I mean, hardware, software, and then producing food and logistics. So kudos to them. It required them to really build themselves out in Chicago because you can't grow quick geographically when you have that much kind of infrastructure that you need to finance. But I think they got up to somewhere in the neighborhood of, I want to say 250 or 300 units around the Chicagoland area and really proved out this concept of like fresh food smart vending. So, they were really a pioneer in the American market for proving that at scale. And same thing for me. I mean, when I have been into the airport now, when I see the machine, it's a no brainer. If I'm flying through Chicago, I'm getting from their machine. I think I had, it was like some overnight oats or something else, but you hit it. I mean, the machine is clean, it's bright, it has lots of good information. It instills a sense of confidence that other vending machines just don't, right? Like you go up to a vending machine, and I'm like, I don't think of buying fresh food out of a vending machine, when I'm traveling or out in the world for the most part, just because the consumer confidence isn't there. So they really nailed the user experience in that regard. And then when the product came out and I ate it, I'm like, wow, this is delicious and healthy, and it's not, jam full of salt and sugar. And I think I spent $6 to get a high quality snack for my son and I. So I give them definitely 5 stars on my experience.
Yeah, that's cool. And speaking of stars, that vending machine in O'Hare is actually rated on Yelp. There is a Yelp.
I
Uh,
did not know that, but maybe after this, podcast, I'll go and give them a rating because I was impressed, and I hate the experience that dining in airports. It just frustrates me because, again, like you said, I mean, it's so easy to spend $25 on a mediocre meal.
yeah, yeah. One of the reviews I was reading on Yelp it said I have bought several items. This is a lower star review. I'm still not impressed. $9 for salad in a jar? Not worth it to me. And in my opinion, I'm like $9 for salad in a jar in an airport? Absolutely worth it to me. Like
Well, the picture you had, it showed too, right? Like you can see the layers, and you're like, oh, there's the corn, and there's this, and there's that, and like it's not sitting in a half inch of liquid where it's like, how old is this thing?
yeah, I think they make them all fresh, like every day in a Chicago kitchen for that one.
and that's the paradigm that they figured out too. And this is key. It's that it's not about vending from a standpoint of scarcity and extending shelf life and being like, oh, waste is the ultimate, evil, because that's the vending mentality.
Yeah.
They came at it from the fresh food mentality of saying, if we make it amazing, high quality, refresh it daily, we're going to drive volume, and our, daily sales are going to really make it worth the fact that, like, are we wasting some, $8, $10 items sometimes? Absolutely. But the top line sales are so good that it's totally part of our business model, and that's okay. And that's where they really kind of, I think, also nailed their execution. So, props to them.
Yeah, and like you said with this data thing, after a while you start to optimize what you need to put in there and how much of each item. And then the stuff that they don't use, they compost or they donate to community kitchens. So yeah, strong brand. Like you said, it kind of changed the paradigm of vending. I remember seeing a CBS interview with the founder, Luke Saunders, and the reporter asked, it's fresh food in a vending machine. Don't you think that's an oxymoron? He's like, no, not, I mean, until Farmer's Fridge came along, it was an oxymoron. And the consumer trust is a huge part of that, because if you're buying whatever, a package of Skittles or soda from a dingy old vending machine, it's sealed. You're like, okay, whatever, I'm getting what I'm paying for. And so to sell fresh food well in a vending machine, you need to have great lighting. It needs to be clean, it needs to be visible. And I think they did that really well. So anyways, that's Farmer's Fridge. Another technology I wanted to talk about, Nathan, is food lockers. These are super interesting. They look super sleek. And for those who don't really know what they are, I can pull up a picture, but essentially you can imagine an Amazon kind of pickup hub, but except it's for food and it's temperature controlled. And restaurants can use these things front of house to make the pickup experience a lot more safe and efficient. So if you're coming home from work and you really want something quick, but you don't want to pay for delivery to your home, but you also don't want to interact with a human, you want something that's, you want to do takeout. But a lot of people have bad experiences with takeout and pickup because the food's not warm, or maybe someone stole their food or whatever. But these food lockers make it secure, and they keep the food at a safe temperature. So let me pull up a picture of food lockers. I don't know if you've had any experience with food lockers, Nathan.
Yeah, there's one company called Ondo, and I know that one of my friends that sells equipment, he sold one of those to a university. And I think it's a great application, because also you just need to feed so many people in a short window. And one of the things that's different is when you start, well, you talked about this earlier with Grubhub Campus. Like, think of, especially if Grubhub Campus is allowing off campus vendors to be part of the college dining experience, the variety of meals that you have coming in. I mean, you could have, hundreds or even thousands of different types of meals coming in at one time. And it's kind of like, I mean, it can be a logistical nightmare. So to pull it all into, like, potentially one hub with these locker systems can be really clever. And this technology is also going side by side with packages coming in, because you think about whether you're in a condo where you have meal delivery coming in, you have packages coming in. People aren't getting so much mail these days, but that's a lot to manage. So these lockers are kind of hitting both sides of the fence, where it's, the UPS, the Amazon, as well as, the different delivery companies, or something that could be made, food that's made on premise. So it can really be this, like, dynamic ecosystem of bringing everything together.
Yeah. This is a company, Apex Order Pickup. Looks like they've partnered with a few universities, Little Caesars in some locations, it looks like, and then another company that I found that speaks to the history of the so-called food lockers, called Automat Kitchen. This is an amazing story. So automats, they started in, I think, Berlin in the late 1800s. Yeah, so this company actually has the history on their website. But so there were such thing as these kind of unintended retail food lockers, where someone could pay with coins and be able to have some sort of hot food dispensed to them. Again, 1895 in Berlin they started, and then gained popularity into the 1900s. The first one in the US was in 1902. And yeah, it seems like they started to grow and then they died down later on. And then kind of with the pandemic, things started, desire for contactless food transactions started to go up again. And so this company was founded. So yeah, super interesting. And the San Francisco company,
Yeah,
that,
Eatsa. Yeah,
yeah.
so I was familiar with them. And as a side note, I love that you brought this slide up because so many times, and again, like having worked in like food tech in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco for the last, 10, 15 years, there's so many times when companies are like, we have this revolutionary idea and we're gonna, we got this VC funding and all this, and we're gonna disrupt this and that. And it's like they don't know their history. Where I've heard of a few companies that kind of made that statement about doing these types of concepts, and I'm like, oh, it's really revolutionary and new, huh? So you kind of have to have you kind of have to, know your history and go into it with some humility, but also you can learn from the history, right? So not saying that Eatsa fell into that category, but it just reminded me of that. But Eatsa was in San Francisco for a few years. Cool experience. You walk in, you order, and it's just this wall of like kind of what looked like the door on like a microwave that you would open, right?
Ah, yeah.
But looked a lot nicer than that. But I feel like there was like dozens of them, and people in their offices could, there's high rises all around, and you could order your lunch on there and go in, and it was really slick. Like it would say your name like on the screen,
Ooh.
when it was ready, and you could see like where you were in the mix, and it was a really cool, fun experience, like a way to get it, really fast. And behind that wall of doors, it was, there was just people back there preparing the food fresh and putting it up in that window. So it's kind of interesting. It like eliminated like the walk and the handoff and like the employees that were kind of in the middle. And yeah, it's been around for what 130 years or whatever it is. So Eatsa was cool. They opened up in a bunch of markets. I think I knew some key early people in that company, and I think they maybe expanded a little bit too fast and ultimately went out of business. But that, as you showed, that concept keeps popping up, and I think it's going to continue to pop up because there's something to it. But the original automat that they had in New York City, I want to say it was there for maybe a couple decades, but it was really, really successful for a while.
Mhm.
I remember reading about that, but yeah, that was kind of my experience with the concept.
Yeah, I wonder what made it lose traction, or when it started to lose traction. Um, Maybe people just were more keen on having a waiter, or I don't
I
know.
could be wrong. I feel like something with maybe canned foods or the industrialization of food production or preservatives or something like that may have played into it. I read that story a few years ago, so I'm not exactly clear, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it's fun to like read about those types of things and understand like the shifts that happened in the landscape. And 100 years from now, somebody will be looking at the pandemic and say like, oh, look at how the landscape of food and technology shifted from the pandemic, and they'll have their learnings from our struggles and what we choose to embrace today.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so those are food lockers. And by the way, for our audience, we'll link to these websites and articles in the show notes so you can check them out for yourself. But moving on to the next technology we want to talk about, smart fridges. This is something we've talked about before and that we'll continue to talk about. This one we want to kind of do a separate episode on, but just to kind of give an overview, um, worldwide smart fridges have been popularized by CryoWorks, which is a Singaporean company. They started in 2010, and they launched in 6 countries with some pretty big partners, Sodexo being one of them. And smart fridges being, if this is your first time hearing of them, a fridge where it can be unlocked with a swipe of a card, and the consumer can just go ahead and pick what items they want and close the fridge. And through whether it's smart chip technology or maybe it's sensors or camera, the fridge can actually uh, evaluate the inventory that was taken and then charge the person accordingly. So CryoWorks was one of the first to do that internationally, and then in the U.S., this company called Byte Technology really started to ramp things up here with partnerships with hospitals and niche brands, um, and then FoodSpot, of course, which is
I could probably jump in there for a
yeah,
second. So,
yeah,
full disclosure, anybody that's been, following our podcast, what we want to do here is try to provide information from people that are a little bit more or quite a bit more in the know than the average person. That's maybe you're running a fresh food company and you're progressive minded, you want to adopt technologies, and you want to just know what's going on. So our goal here is to provide that value, and we always really try to do it in a non-biased way. However, I am the CEO of FoodSpot, and Isaac is the director of marketing for FoodSpot. So it's something that we know because we live and breathe this. And as I mentioned earlier, I worked with Chowbotics and I've worked with many technologies before. So when we talk about, and sorry to cut you off, Isaac, I just wanted to throw that out there really quick for our listeners. So as Isaac mentioned, when we talk about, food tech, smart fridges specifically, it's very similar to the concept that of farmer's fridge that we talked about earlier. But instead of having, the vending where the kind of the container drops down or whatever, a smart fridge, you just use your payment, you unlock it, you open the door, and you have access to pick up items and interact. And when you close the door, it locks and it charges you. And there's 5, 6 companies in the US that are doing this. And those companies are, there's us, FoodSpot, Byte, there's Hubs, there's ShelfX, and there's a couple out of China. But that's pretty much the mix. So it's the good news is it's a pretty small pack. So when companies are kind of shopping what might be the most appropriate technology for their fresh food company, you don't have to look too many places. And actually, the episode that we're publishing after this is going to be all about that. So we'll save that for a little deep dive, because there's a lot to consider when you're shopping for smart fridges.
yeah. And speaking of the word shopping, I truly think smart fridges are the closest thing you can get to shopping in an unattended retail situation, where you can open the fridge and just hold the items in your hand, look at them, and take and go, right? The transaction's so fast. You don't have to wait for some robot arm to take your salad down from the shelf or anything. And so that's very interesting. And I mean, we're biased, but we're excited to see where that goes, obviously. So now maybe we'll move back to some hot food vending machines. So here, there are a few to mention. La Bread Express, which is essentially a vending machine that can bake goods, pizzas, pastries. I just read an article today that Buddy Cake Vos Velastro apparently partnered with these guys to open a vending machine in a Vegas casino, right?
Yeah, I'd mentioned that a little bit in a recent podcast, but I thought it was worth bringing up again. So I was actually at the HQ for La Bread Express a few weeks ago, just having a meeting with their founder. Obviously, our concepts of having a smart fridge next to a hot vending robot makes a lot of sense. But they launched with Cake Boss, Buddy Velastro, at one of the casinos in Vegas, where, imagine this, if you've been to Vegas before, it's like the hotel's upstairs, the casino's downstairs, and when the doors open for the elevator to go out to the show floor where the casino is, this vending unit is sitting there, and it's full of like all the most favorite pastries that you can get from Cake Boss, and they're warm, right? So you hit a button, you select what you want, it immediately heats it up. I think when I was there, they made me some focaccia pizza.
Nice.
And it was delicious, and it immediately heats it up. I think you maybe wait something like 60 seconds, so it has like that combination type cooking that Starbucks uses, so that not only does it get warm, but it has the right texture, kind of unlike if you put something in a microwave.
Yeah.
So great experience, super fast, super fun. and also really cool to have like that, like, Food Network brand experience in such like a fast, concise way. And you don't need to, you're not spending a ton of money. It's just a really fun, cool experience. It delivers great products. So it was really nice to kind of see what they're doing with this. There's robotics in the machine, so very, yeah, very fun experience.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there can be a cooling unit like a fridge and then an oven that heats it up, hundreds of degrees hotter than that in the same machine that's crazy to me. I want to try it though, because apparently, I mean, it's up to his standard, and he's a chef. That's what he says in the article, so it must be good.
I mean, I used to be a pastry chef when I was younger too. So, I mean, yeah, I was definitely impressed. I mean, the founder, he's French, and we were kind of, geeking out about the nuance of what makes, kind of higher caliber with hitting, especially with hitting textures, as I mentioned. I was impressed. It was a great experience. It was fast. It was something that would not, so many times when people think of vending, or at least I do, it's like kind of like a move of desperation more often than not. And I would actually go there and, happily, get a slice of pizza out of there. It was a lot better than a lot of slices of pizza that I've had in my life. So good experience, and kudos to them. I think they have about 60 or 80 units live in the US right now, but they just made a big deal with one of the largest food service management firms in the US. So expect to see them growing very quickly.
Yeah, that was interesting to me that they have a menu that you can choose from, and you can order from a US Foods or something, or you can say, hey, what if I want to bake this kind of croissant? They can help you kind of configure the oven to best suit that, or you can just make up your own recipe in general, which I think is what Buddy did here in this case.
That's really critical too, is like the fact that they set it up with US Foods as a distributor that like restaurants buy their ingredients from. So you could buy their smart vending unit, and then they'll show you the program and say these are the exact items that you buy and that you stock, and you're just good to go. And they've really eliminated that learning curve. So it's really key when you get into smart vending that you're working with a company that understands that and really helps you deliver that brand experience that's unique to vending.
Yeah. Yeah. There are other pizza machines, and there's one that makes bao. The this is Wow Bao. I don't know if people are familiar, but we talked about it on a recent podcast where it's just pretty much a bun with meat inside, and there's a company called Wow Bao that's rolled out, I think, 50 machines. I'll share a picture really quick
They have
here.
retail locations. I can't wait to try that one because I know in my head that like bao is totally, it's a bulletproof like kind
Doable.
of food product.
Yeah.
So you can, take it right out of a freezer and heat it up. And again, you want to hit the right textures and everything. But I can't wait to try one of those. I haven't yet, but I could see how that product could work awesome in a smart vending machine.
No, yeah, as a Chinese American, I grew up on this stuff, and sometimes even having homemade versions of it. And yeah, I'm really excited too. I'm curious though, because we've been talking about pizza machines where they're ovens, but baos traditionally you steam them. So I'm wondering, yeah, how they would pull that off. But I guess I'll have to find time to go over to one of these locations.
Yeah,
Um,
at home, I usually just wet a paper towel, take it out of the freezer, and wrap it in a paper towel and microwave it. But we'll see. I'm sure they've got something more sophisticated than my hack to steaming.
Hey, look, that's steaming of some sort. So there we go. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was robot waiters, and I actually have a personal interaction with one experience at Heidi Lau Hot Pot, which apparently is the highest grossing hot pot chain in the U.S. And I'm not quite convinced, Nathan. I'm not going to lie. It came around. For those of you who don't know what hot pot is, it's just you sit around a table with a boiling pot of broth, and then you just throw in meat and vegetables at your pleasure. And yeah, so I think I was in Seattle, and I had a robot get my sliced meat for me. Let's see. Here's a picture of one of the robots. Slow, clunky. The aisles, they don't have a ton of space, and there's other waiters there that still need to be there, of course. So I'm not sure. I think it has a cool factor, but for me, a little unnecessary, not going to lie. I don't know if you have any opinions about robot waiters.
Um, it's interesting. Again, I think the challenge here in my experience is you got to get past the novelty. Now, if they're the most popular in the US, is this robot concept helping kind of the experience? Yes. If you know hot pot, so like most Asian cultures have their own version of this hot pot that Isaac's talking about, where you're just everybody's sitting down around that hot broth, and usually there's a handful of selections, maybe 4 or 5 different broths you can choose from. So across different Asian cultures, the broths are a little bit different. Maybe the ingredients, the vegetables and the meat and the seafood you're putting in is a little bit different. But suffice to say, like, it's all about the experience. You're there, it's tactile, you're interacting with the people, you're doing your own cooking while you're having a conversation. I mean, it's very experiential. So it makes a lot of sense why, although it may be a bit of a novelty, and there's, it's depending on how efficient it is. It sounded like you said it was kind of okay and a little clunky, but it's part of the experience. So you just added layers into the experience. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you can't use one of these robots if you have stairs, if you have like a big transition between your floors. Sometimes, they're not, maybe there's a large, kind of joining segment on the threshold of the door, like something like that. Like then you're just disqualified. So I think these technologies are really going to shine in those types of environments that I just explained, where it's experiential before you brought this robot concept to the table, and not trying to take something that's pretty mundane, like, potatoes and eggs and toast for breakfast, and make that experiential, because people aren't going there for the experience. It's just kind of a side novelty. And I don't think it's necessarily going to drive more revenue in an environment like that. And it may just be a clunky, expensive thing that you don't really get that return on your investment.
Yeah, yeah. Haidilao Lao is the pinnacle of experiential dining. I mean, the hand pulled noodles, they have someone come out with dough, and they just dance with the noodle in front of you and whip it around and almost hit you, and then they put it in the pot for you. And apparently there's a Haidilao Lao University in China where the waiters go to get trained, and then they get sent out to these restaurants. So yeah, very experiential. I think I agree with you there. These will add to that experience, but not necessarily, they won't necessarily elevate a Denny's diner delivering your pancakes. So great. I think that's a pretty good overview of some of the most important tech that's going on in the food tech space. Today, we've talked about delivery bots, smart fridges, food lockers, and other topics. And I think both Nathan and I are really excited to see where these things go.
Yeah, it's not slowing down at any time. I think it's definitely compounding. And the examples that we used today of these different companies that we've mentioned, for everyone we've mentioned, there's probably at least 3 or 4 other companies doing the same exact thing. And there's always kind of, Isaac and I hear little bits and pieces of other companies that are getting ready to launch, or maybe it's a little bit earlier off, where it's like not cutting edge technology, but maybe like bleeding edge technology. So we try not to lean too far into those types of things. We bring things to the table that are a little bit more practical, or that people, all over the country maybe have a chance of seeing it come, and come to life locally. So I think that's it for today. But again, a nice little kind of snapshot of some of the things that you may be seeing or have seen, will see out there in the world, and we'll keep trying to bring it your way to keep you informed.
Yeah, if you found this episode helpful, please help us by sharing it with someone that would find it useful as well. You can always rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. So let's wrap this one up, Nathan.
Brilliant. And if you ever have a topic that you would like to have us talk about that you think is relevant to the podcast, then by all means, drop it in the content or an email. We can be reached at info@launchfoodspot.com, and have a fantastic week.
Okay, see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. If you're interested in learning more about smart vending platforms, you can visit us at launchfoodspot.com. I'm Nathan Downs, and you've been listening to the Fresh Vending Podcast.